Africa as a continent was enjoying the benefits of their natural resources, and that's one of the things that comes out in the movie, how this nation and how this collective in Africa is benefiting from its natural resources because it hasn't been pillaged by colonists. And that's what happened. So who knows what we would be enjoying coming out of Africa that's similar to what you see in this movie, The Black Panther.
Welcome to the Fred Opie Show, a food history, research, and writing podcast. We focus on using history to unpack strategies for you to make a positive impact in your world. I'm your host, Fred Opie, a professor of history and foodways.
I'm not going to ruin it for you all. So if you haven't seen it yet, I'm going to attempt to share what will be inspiration to go see the movie, not to avoid the movie. I want to talk about the movie from the perspective of a male, a feminist, and a reader of Walter Rodney's book, How Capitalism Underdeveloped Black America. Looking at the movie from a male perspective. Me and my wife had very different emotions about the movie. She was super excited. She had her outfit that she had picked out. She was going to get it all together. She wanted to decorate her face, all kinds of stuff. And I've heard on one of the podcasts that my wife has turned me on to called Truth's Table, a group of women who have that show, terrific show by the way, they were talking about Black Panther, and they were talking about the clothes they were going to buy. It's just a different perspective from me as a guy. I'm not speaking collectively for all men. I'm excited about going to see the movie. The ideal of getting a special outfit that matches all together, that's not in my mind as me, Fred. But that was Tita. Which is, again, this is not a criticism. It is a difference. And some of the problems that happen in marriages come down to differences that people articulate as one's wrong and one's right. It's just a difference. And I noticed we had a very different perspective. I almost felt like a party pooper for my wife in going to see the movie because she's all fired up. She's like, she wants to do this and do that. And I'm fired up, but kind of me, just the way my MO is, I'm fired up on the inside. There's also a difference of this movie if you're a comic person. I know there were some people who were super excited because they're into comics. My son Kennedy, he's into comics. So he understands, I think he's seen all these comic-related movies. That ain't me. I don't get it. I've never been into comics. Not criticize it, just a difference. So my anticipation about the movie is just different, not a comic. Let me give you my other perspective, which may catch some of you off guard. I anticipated seeing the movie as a feminist. Well, let me give you my definition of a feminist, and I hope this enlightens many of you out there, particularly those who are fathers of daughters. My definition, real simple as a feminist, is somebody who sees male and female as both created by God, and you want those two species to have the same dignity and opportunities. Now, so you may have your own definition. That's my working definition. Shout out to Don McPherson. If you should take a look at his work, and Don has daughters as well, we want our daughters to be treated with the same dignity as our sons and have the same opportunity as our sons. When they go out to the work world, we want them to have the same pay as their male counterparts. So I saw the movie as a feminist. What I mean, one of the things that's really beautiful about the movie Black Panther is that the women in the movie are treated on equal par with the men. When you think about African culture, you don't necessarily think about equality between the genders. But in this movie, that is the case. Women are scientists. Women are experts. Women are soldiers. Women are leaders. Women are on the elders' council. And it is a beautiful thing. Women are not objectified. This is not a movie in which black women who have leading roles are light-skinned women, which is the case in many of our even current sitcoms, that when there's a black woman in the movie or in the TV show, it is somebody who's light and bright. And again, no offense to any of you out there that are light and bright, because you didn't have anything to do with that anyhow. That was genetically, that's part of the deal. But unfortunately, in this country and in many parts of the world in which movies are made, those who make those decisions have a very Eurocentric view of beauty, and that does not come through in this movie, and thank God. So that's a wonderful part of the movie. You have these images of black women with our natural hair color and texture. You just don't see that. It is not typical. Now, if you think I'm lying, next time you watch a movie on Netflix or on TV, and there's a black woman in the movie, look at their complexion, look at their hair texture. Most of them have relaxed hair. I also want to talk about the movie in the context of the book by Walter Rodney, who was assassinated. He was a Caribbean scholar. His first book, and perhaps most renowned book, is How Capitalism Underdeveloped Africa. The thesis is that if you look at Africa before the African slave trade and the arrival of the first Europeans, Africa as a continent was enjoying the benefits of their natural resources, and that's one of the things that comes out in the movie, how this nation and how this collective in Africa is benefiting from its natural resources because it hasn't been pillaged by colonists. And that's what happened. So who knows what we would be enjoying coming out of Africa that's similar to what you see in this movie, The Black Panther Party, if it were not for the European colonization of Africa. The show will be right back.
If you like what you hear in the show, share a link on Facebook or Twitter, or send a link to a friend. If you have a question you want us to address on the show, write me at fdopie@gmail.com. You can find our show archive, blog, suggested reading, and more at fredopie.com. Now back to the show.
Think about the term brain drain. That is when the brightest and the smartest of your community leave your community to go someplace like the United States or Europe. African intellectual firepower that was no longer there with the beginning of the African slave trade. Think about what happened also during the European colonization of Africa. All those things are important factors if you think about where Africa is today. And the movie depicts a region of Africa, an empire within Africa that did not suffer colonization. Now, interesting thing is, when you get to the period of the colonization of Africa of 1885, the European colonization of Africa, the only country that maintained its independence was Ethiopia. And it did that up until World War II and the arrival of Mussolini and the Italians in Ethiopia. But here's this, in this movie, The Black Panther, you have this region that is protected because of its intellectual power and because of its wit from the ravages of colonization. And then out of this country comes this great empire and the Black Panther. That's what the movie is doing. It's showing, no, you don't need a great white hope to come into Africa to save us. No, we don't need technology from the United States or Europe to help us. It is a country that has the ability to protect itself, a country that is prosperous, a country that the presentation of it is democratic. There are no coups. There are no some of the things that you think, worst of all, when you think about Africa, they don't exist in this one region of Africa that is discussed in the movie The Black Panther. So that is awesome. We didn't get a chance to talk about this, but I think it's interesting. The movie celebrates African culture, particularly the clothing, the music, the plants, all those things that this region, this empire has. It does a terrific job of doing this. Clothing, as I mentioned, is terrific. It shows all these different types of African clothing that I love and still wear, particularly in the summertime when it's hot. But one of the things that it neglects is African food is neglected. It's almost though these people don't eat. I don't remember scenes in which they were eating. The only time you see them consuming food or beverage is when they are doing the ceremonies for a person to become a king. The king has to face a challenger and has to take this libation. That's the only time. But other than that, they're not consuming any food. As a person who teaches African history and food, there's okra that comes from Africa, watermelon that comes from Africa. The key ingredient in Coca-Cola, the cola nut, comes from Africa. There are two species of rice that our original species come from, one from Asia and one from Africa. None of that is displayed within it. So if you think about places like the low country of North Carolina, low country of South Carolina, and low country Georgia, those are the rice producing regions, and that technology all came from Africa in a region known as the Rice Belt. And it's that technology that came to the United States or to the British colonies during the African slave trade that enriched thousands of European planters. I don't see people consuming rice, just not even discussed. Things like that I thought were interesting. Barbecue, the concept of barbecue comes certainly from the Caribbean and Native Americans, but it also comes from Africans. A number of things that are made with yams, all that culture comes from Africa. There are so many things. Celestial teeth, the key ingredients come from Africa. None of that stuff is discussed. So I just wondered why that was the case. Please email me at fdopie@gmail.com and share your questions. I will repeat them on the show so people get the benefit of your question and my response. Invite me to speak and host the Fred Opie Show at your school, club team, or camp by emailing me at fdopie@gmail.com. Hosting a show is a great way for the older students who are interviewed to pass on positive peer pressure to younger students. And during the Q&A with the audience, I share a perspective I wish I had when I was younger.
Now back to the show.
This is something that if you haven't gone, you need to be aware of. The tradition in these kind of Marvel comic movies or other comic movies, I can't speak for all of them because I'm not an expert, is they roll the credits, and traditional movie viewers like myself, we say it's time for us to roll, and we get up and start leaving. They do another scene. So they roll credits. You think the movie's over. I go out, and they're rolling another scene. My wife, she knew this. She stayed in with my daughter and watched more. Then after they roll another scene, then they go to credits. And I come back, to find out what's going on, and they're like, they still sitting there. A bunch of folks sitting there. People in the know were sitting in the theater. Well, I got to go to the bathroom, so I leave again. My wife says, honey, you missed 2 extra scenes. So that is something you need to be aware of. Don't leave until it is over, completely over. The screen goes black because you're going to miss something like I did. You want to make sure that you don't miss those scenes. The other thing that I know that we were going to do today, and one of the things we want to do as a regular part of the show, is read a scripture that is relevant to whatever is going on. So the scripture comes from Colossians 2:8, and I'm going to relate it to the movie. It says, Colossians 2:8, and this is from the NIV version, see to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the elemental spiritual forces of this world, rather than on Christ. Now, there is one scene, they begin to pray, and they say, pray to the ancestors. As a believer in Jesus Christ, I don't pray to my mother and father who are now deceased. My grandparents are now deceased. Okay, the Bible clearly tells me that our intercessor is Jesus Christ. It says, come boldly to the throne of grace, okay, in your time of need. It didn't say come boldly to the ancestors. Sometimes folks, they want to eat everything, the chicken and the bones. So there are some bones in terms of my faith as a Christian and someone who cherishes the scripture is I'm not going to be praying to any ancestors. Let's just be really clear about that. So I thought that scripture would be relevant. And one of the things that we want to do as part of our show is do a shout out. So one of the shout outs I want to do today is to a woman at the theater. My wife wanted to take a picture of me and her. She wanted to take a picture of us in front of the advertisement for the Panther movie at the theater. We were trying to do a selfie, and I'm not a selfie person, so I was messing up royally. And this woman she said, I can take a picture of you. And she just stopped and took a picture of us. And I just thought it was so nice. Kindness is just the kind of things that you can do to make somebody's life better. Why not just try to counterbalance the stupid stuff with some acts of kindness like this woman? You see somebody struggling to take a picture, help them out. You see somebody struggling to get in a door, hold the door for them. You see somebody at the cash register and they're missing 25 cents or 2 pennies, offer to do it for them. Here's another one. The next time you go to the drive-thru, pay for the person behind you. Buy them a coffee. Buy their meal if you got the money to do it. You're going to get more out of it than they will. But just be kind. And that's one of the things I would say in the Black Panther movie. The character who plays the Black Panther, he's got a kind heart. I mean, that's the one thing about it. He's fighting villains in the whole bit, and but he's got a kind heart. He listens to his mama. He listens to the women in his life. He's just a kind-hearted person. And that is my word for the year, kindness. I need to work on kindness. Honey, I've heard you. I know you're out there. I know you're listening. I'm working on kindness. And so that's the thing we're going to try to do every show, is do a shout-out to people who are just doing acts of kindness. And, lady, I don't know who you were at the movie theater, but thank you for making a difference in our life that day. I can't say too many times where I've seen a movie with folks that look like me who are not depicted in a negative, derogatory way. So this is a positive movie with great examples of role models. But it's unprecedented. And Hollywood now is going to realize, yeah, by the way, we can do movies that feature black folks in the lead roles, and it'll make money. And that's the thing, that Hollywood has had these crazy ideals about what's going to make money, not going to make money, and they're finally realizing you can make great movies, and it doesn't matter what the people look like. I'm not calling for every movie to be black, 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 black. But folks, don't be stupid and think that putting folks that look like me in a movie is going to mean that you're going to lose something, because that has been the rationale. It's like the whole black quarterback thing we had in the NFL, and the whole thing we have with black head coaches. We are just in 2018 getting past some of this ignorance. Check out Walter Rodney's How Capitalism Undeveloped Africa. You can probably find it in your public library. Great book. And that is it. I'm out. That's a wrap for this show. Thanks for listening. To hear more content like it, go to fredopie.com. This show could have been brought to you by your company. If you have questions about advertising and sponsoring this show, contact us at fdopie@gmail.com. That's fdopie@gmail.com.
Start with a gift. Learn how to understand your gift, monetize it, and serve others with it. I wrote it for the younger version of me, who I describe as having sports on the brain and lots of pain. It'll be available online at fredopie.com.